2 o'clock. Here we go.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right, we'll give about 30 seconds for a couple more people to join. Thanks for joining the Smith & Gesteland webinar on key performance indicators. All right, let's go. Good afternoon and welcome to our series of eConnections webinars. My name is Neil Fauerbach. I'm a partner with Smith & Gesteland. For those of you who know Smith & Gesteland, we're a local CPA firm and business consulting organization. We're about 85 people strong at our one office in Madison. We have clients in manufacturing, supply chain, construction, high-tech, professional services, and nonprofits. We are particularly well known for our family business practice and our 80/20 services. Today the topic is managing better with key performance indicators. Our presenters are Bill Pellino and Heather Schommer. Bill's a partner with Smith & Gesteland and the partner in charge of our manufacturing and supply chain practice group. He is also very involved in our 80/20 practice group, working with clients to improve their bottom line. In his work, he has implemented the use of KPIs with some very impressive results. Heather Schommer is a strategic advisor for our Profit Enhancement Solutions Group. She works closely with clients to employ various tools from the 80/20 toolbox, helping them identify the true profitability of their business segments. Heather is a trusted advisor, and companies seek her input in monthly operations meetings to identify processes and improvements used to drive 80/20 through their organizations. She came to us in 2013 as a recovering commercial banker. We're happy to have her here. As the webinar progresses, please type your anonymous questions into your control panel. If we have time at the end, we will attempt to answer them. We will be sending an email later this week answering all of your questions and providing additional information that helps support the information you will hear shortly. Here to start us out is Heather Schommer.
All right, great. Thank you, Neil, and thank you for everyone attending today. So, just to get started, we thought we'd go straight to the Bible, the first place we all go to get answers, Wikipedia, and define what is a key performance indicator. A key performance indicator, or KPI, is a type of performance management. KPIs evaluate the success of an organization or of a particular activity in which it engages. So basically, anything that you use to measure performance in your business. So today we'll talk about the types of KPIs you can use, how to begin, how to make sure you're measuring the right stuff, and how to get employees engaged in the process as well. Throughout the presentation today, we'll also have a few poll questions as they relate to KPIs in your organization. And we'll get started right away with the very first question. So poll question number 1 is, do you currently use KPIs at your organization? Yes or no? You just want to select an answer. I know. Perfect.
81%. We may have some people out there who are not as attentive. 93. All right, we'll give you 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. All right, publish.
All right.
There we go. 64% yes and 36% no.
Okay, great. Good mix. We'd expect to see a large majority of you already using KPIs, and we'll talk a little bit more about different ones that you can use.
And actually don't. Some people may not even realize they're using KPIs in their business. If you're using a ratio analysis, anything can, if used the right way, be a key performance indicator. So while 64% I think was the number there, and there's a good chance that more of our listeners are actually using them. And we'll get to that.
Perfect. So first off, why? What is so great about key performance indicators or KPIs? To us, it's part of knowing the score. It's just like in sports. Think about having 2 football games being played simultaneously, one with a scoreboard and one without. It's not too difficult to understand which game is going to be more competitive, show more skill, and generally have a higher level of performance. It's the one where you're keeping score, of course. Same thing goes for business. Establishing ways to measure performance in your business, however, can be difficult, especially if you haven't done it in the past. But in order to reach your goals, hold people accountable, or grow and sustain a successful business, it's critical. It's what we use with clients to gauge success and improvement. So here are a few reasons why knowing the score is so important. Number one, it allows management to maintain a better pulse on the organization. Certainly with KPIs, you're able to understand how the business is doing in real time, not just at the monthly and quarterly financial reporting meetings. It promotes data-driven decisions. We mentioned that my background is in 80/20 and Smith & Gesteland is an accounting firm. We're huge proponents of using data to drive decision-making. Step one is to actually start collecting the data, and that's what KPIs help get at. KPIs also help keep the business focused on its goals. The entire organization knows what's important when you have the right KPIs established. And it gives employees a metric to rally around, drives appropriate behavior. Done correctly, KPIs can be a great way to build morale. Gives everyone a target to shoot for, and of course drives the right behavior to achieve it.
In addition, there's a lot of information in companies that you don't necessarily want all of your employees to have access to. So while management has the ability to use financial statements and detailed financial statements, oftentimes that data isn't shared with a lot of the employees. So in most cases, we like using key performance indicators because it's specific to an area which the employee can get involved in. And even for the users of the financial statements, sometimes when you just want to get an idea of how things are going, there's too much data when you look at a financial statement. If you look at a balance sheet, an income statement, cash flow statement, it's just too much there, and it's really hard to kind of zero in on what's important. So even for upper management, we like to see key performance indicators used as just a general, as Heather said, a pulse on the organization.
Okay. So where to start? You know that you want to implement metrics, things to track on the business, but where do you start? One of the most important things to keep in mind when setting metrics is that they need to align with your company goals and your strategic plan. This seems obvious, but you would be amazed at how many times we see businesses tracking things that seem important but really aren't useful in helping the company achieve its goals. So our clients see this inverted triangle quite often. It helps illustrate and align the organization, ensuring that proper behavior is being driven. At the top is your 3-year strategic plan. What are the company's top 5 objectives over the next 3 years? From the strategic plan, then, are your annual company goals, written each year. These are the top 3 to 5 things that the organization needs to accomplish in the next year, ultimately supporting that 3-year strategic plan that they have laid out. From there, annual company goals funnel down to annual department individual goals. This is the crux of our goal-setting process for managers, ensuring that, again, as you get more granular, these goals at the department and manager level support annual company goals and support the 3-year strategic plan. Once those department and individual goals are established, the KPIs are tactical metrics that help drive achievement of the goals above it. So an example that we'll walk through. Let's say a company's 3-year strategic plan is to double in size, double sales within the next 3 years. An annual goal may be to add 3 new accounts. So the company decides that in the next 12 months, as a way to reach the strategic plan, this year we need to add 3 new key accounts that each bring in an extra $1 million of revenue. So that's the annual target. Then the sales department, going next level down in the triangle, decides that in order to align with that annual goal, the goal in the sales department is we want to win 1 prospect in the first quarter, 1 in the second, and 1 in the third. Down to the KPI level then, that drives at the specific behavior. So maybe the sales team decides that they want to track the number of face-to-face interactions with key accounts, something that drives at the specific behavior to help them win a prospect each quarter. This helps drive specific tactical behavior to drive those results.
And oftentimes when we work with companies, what we notice is that the pyramid actually is inverted. So all of a sudden will go into a company and find that they are measuring a ton of different things, but really they don't have the strategic plan worked out, they don't have the annual company goals worked out, or the individual goals, and really you find yourself measuring everything but not getting any results because what you're measuring is not tied to the strategic plan. So it's easy sometimes to just jump in and start measuring things without really knowing what you're measuring and why and what your goals are. Getting back to the original point, if you don't know where you're going, any goal will get you there. I mean, that's why one of the first things we like to do is realign that pyramid and make sure that the KPIs that we're setting up align specifically with those plans.
Okay. Another great place to start in establishing KPIs, if there's something in your organization that needs improvement, start measuring it.
That simple
act alone will generally drive improvement initially.
We always do. That
measure gets better.
Simply
Having it on your radar screen, step number one.
So
For example, say that your company is having quality issues. You're getting customer complaints, you've talked to the team, you've tried to make changes, but you just don't feel like you're getting any traction. Start tracking the percentage of rework or returns. Now there's someone that everyone sees every day. It creates much more focus as jobs are completed. It helps you know if things are improving or not as well. One of the other mistakes that organizations typically make is actually measuring too much. So the third bullet is measure the critical few. Don't measure everything. This is really, really important. To support your key annual goals, you likely only need 4 to 6 key metrics to help track performance. A lot of companies end up adding KPIs and measuring more and more and more without stopping to measure a number of other things. And all that does is create complexity. The company loses focus, and they're not able to execute all the KPIs at a 10 level. Do we have time for a second poll question? Okay. So based on the first poll, there's about 64% of you that are currently using KPIs. For those that are using them or maybe perhaps trying to implement them in your organization, the question is, what has been the biggest obstacle with your KPIs? And the options we have are employee engagement, getting started, knowing that you're measuring the right things, seeing results and improvement, sticking with it, or all of the above.
We're up to about 60%.
Okay.
Give another 10 seconds. 67%. Okay, good sample.
Perfect.
There you go.
So, looks like 32% of the...
Bill, is our time reading it? Getting started, knowing what to measure is 39%. Seeing results and improvement is 13%. Sticking with it, 16%. All of the above, 26%.
Okay. So if I'm reading it correctly, is it getting started that was the number one? Okay. We'll touch on all of these different metrics as we go through and how to improve upon each of those. Here's some other examples of things that our clients have said with the biggest challenges in getting started. Getting the entire team on board with KPIs and their importance was a challenge in getting started. The process of developing KPIs, making sure they align with the company's vision, mission, and strategies. Again, this seems like an obvious one, but it's actually very difficult to make sure that everything is aligned appropriately. Determining what KPIs are best for each department. And it takes time to develop a culture that embraces KPIs and what they represent. Certainly, this isn't something that you can begin tracking KPIs and see results immediately. And it's definitely a cultural change for the organization to recognize that there's metrics being tracked, what it means, how they can impact them. Okay, key performance indicators, as we mentioned, again, helps an organization define and reach its goals. They can be used throughout an organization. A common misconception
is that
KPIs are more of a plant floor operations tool. You think of KPI boards, production cells, but actually KPIs can be used anywhere. Typically a company may have a handful of key metrics for the organization as a whole, and then they may have each department or segment of the business will have their own subset of KPIs. The third bullet I have there is measuring the 80s versus the 20s. For those of you that have not been to one of our 80-20 seminars or implemented 80-20 at your organization, I'll explain what we mean here. The 80s are the critical few, the most important customers, products, processes that drive the majority of the results in your organization. The 20s are everything else, and I'll explain why we like to make a separation here when it comes to KPI metrics. An easy way to illustrate is with customers. So 80%, the 80s are your top customers. These are the ones that make up likely more than 80% of your revenue. And most everyone will agree that these customers are very, very important to your business. You want to protect these key accounts. So when it comes to KPIs, it's important that you're measuring your performance separately for these top customers so that you can ensure they're getting the very best treatment. So let's use on-time delivery. The number of times your product is delivered on time to the customer. Many companies will measure on-time delivery across all customers as a total. So let's say you're at 80%. You feel that's pretty good. You'd like to improve. You're not completely disappointed in that number. And it may be acceptable for the vast majority of your customer base. But is it acceptable for your top customers to be at 80%? Think about it. 80% on-time delivery, that means that 1 out of every 5 times your customer receives their order, it's late. When you go to the grocery store, that means that 1 out of every 5 times you go to buy milk, it's out of stock, it's not available. So when you think about it this way, sometimes it doesn't seem so good after all. Certainly not for your top customers, where you want to provide the very, very best service. So by creating a separate KPI metric for on-time delivery for your top customers versus everyone else, it does 2 things. Number 1, it helps protect your top customers, ensures that they're treated differently and that they're getting exceptional service. Number 2, it's easier to improve overall. When you're focusing on a smaller subset of customers rather than on everyone at the same time, it's easier to make improvements and drive change for those critical few. And then other examples that I have listed, on-time delivery, quality, production rates, revenue per day, customer satisfaction scores if it's in a customer service department.
You know, and actually one of the key performance indicators that one of our clients uses that's really important for them is safety.
That's really important for them is safety. We have actually every month, and that's the first thing that we go through with the safety record and all the things that happen that month. And they've actually developed key performance indicators
around the safety, and they use it basically to track near misses or reportable incidents to actual injuries on the job and things. So each month they look at the key performance indicators, talk through it. Is the ratio an indicator at what we hoped it would be and what we predicted it would be? And if not, then they talk through things they can do to kind of get that key performance indicator back in line.
Perfect. Ultimately, it depends on your company, what your goals are, what you want to improve. There's really a KPI, you can derive a KPI around really anything in the organization. One of our favorites that deserves its own slide for that reason is revenue per employee. We love this one. It's powerful in every organization, regardless of the industry, whether you're selling products or services, whether it's office or manufacturing. It's very easy to measure, and if you don't track this metric today, certainly start. Pretty self-explanatory. It's your total revenue divided by the total number of employees, or full-time equivalents, what we use. Generally, clients will track this on both a monthly basis and an annual basis. And also the entire company will track it as well as individual departments or segments within the business. After a few months of collection, you can pretty quickly figure out where a company's baseline is. And once you have that, the goal is to continue to see this ratio improve, move up. Because think about it, if this ratio is going up, that either means that you've been able to add revenue without adding as much overhead, or you've been able to cut some excess overhead without sacrificing revenues. In either scenario, your bottom line is improving.
You know, the one caveat for some companies that we work with, some of our distributors actually have, you know, they're high revenue, high volume business but low margin. So for some distributors, you probably want to look at margin, gross margin per employee versus revenue, because in those businesses we work with, sometimes the mix of the product, you know, if you sell more of this product versus this product based on the margins, and since the revenue is so high, it can actually, you know, your revenue could be going up, but you're not seeing any benefit on the bottom line. For most cases, for most companies, revenue per employee is the perfect measurement to use, but just be aware that for some high volume, low margin businesses, you might want to track gross margin per employee.
And then we just wanted to provide some other examples, again, getting at there's so many different KPIs that can be used in a variety of different departments. So these next couple slides are just examples. So in operations, process, machine downtime, scrap rates, rework level. In the accounting and finance world, margins, working capital, percentage of your AR dollars that are past due. On the customer service side, retention rates, customer complaints, customer satisfaction scores, and even in marketing as well, conversion rates, cost per lead, search engine rankings. So just to give you a flavor of some different types of KPI examples.
You know, since we talked so much about 80-20 and tracking the right things, we just want to go back a minute here and just to remember, you know, don't try, you know, when you track things, you want to try to predict a certain result. So for example, for changeover rates, you may want to get really fast changing over some of your lines that run your high volume products or your products for your best customers, but you actually may want to slow down the changeover time on your 20s, that low volume special product that you don't run very often. It's okay to not be fast or have a high changeover turnover ratio on that, but you really just want to make sure that you're driving in the right direction. If you try to get great at everything again, it's just going to be difficult to sustain going forward, which is a lot of the times when we go into companies and they're, or, you know, for example, if they've already applied lean in their business and they had a really hard time making it kind of stick and sustain, it's always the case is that they're trying to get great at everything instead of just trying to get great at a few things. So again, with your KPIs, try to predict what you want the result to be. We want to get really fast, for example, on changing over this high volume line, and it's okay if, in fact, if we expect that we'll go backwards a little bit on this on the low volume line. So that's what your KPIs should be able to tell you. So don't be surprised if it goes in that direction, and if so, you're probably doing the right things.
All right, we are big proponents of visual management. This is a very important piece of KPIs that cannot be overlooked. Because here's what happens all too often. You put KPIs together, it's a nice report, typically black and white. You post it on a bulletin board. You know, we've all seen these different boards of information. It's good information, but it's not really telling us anything. In order to really understand what's going on, you need to go up and read the fine details of every report. So many times we tour facilities and you really want to understand how is this business doing, but I don't have the time to go up and read the fine details of every KPI report. So here's some guidelines that we like to use. Number one, of course, simplification is key. We encourage clients to find ways to make KPI boards very simple, very easy to read. Posted in high traffic areas. Definitely use colors where you can. Someone walking through for the first time should be able to know very quickly whether things are going well or not. Is the business operating well, or have things fallen off the track? And then you can look at the KPIs more closely to understand what exactly might be happening. But very important to keep these visual and easy to read.
And it's, you know, in addition to that, for some cases, you're going to have KPIs that are specific to a specific, you know, a various department, whether it's, you know, someone on the floor or someone in the office, things. So you're going to have different KPIs in different places that are kind of outside of those general KPIs that tell you how the business is doing. You know, for example, if the company has one, you know, big goal that they want to get through the organization, having, as Heather said, that KPI in a high traffic area is a perfect idea. However, if you want to work on getting your, obviously, you know, let's, for example, you want to work on changeovers or some operational thing, make sure that's in the area where the employees have the ability to affect the results of that event or that measurement. You know, You also want to make sure, that it's in the vernacular that they understand. As Heather said, anyone should be able to quickly know whether it's being hit or missed. Make sure the terminology you use is simple and that everyone, if you're walking down the floor, knows exactly what's going on.
All right, so I think it's time for our third poll question. So for those of you that use KPIs, the question is, how often are they being reviewed? And the choices are daily, weekly, monthly, or sporadically only as needed. And then there's also an option if you don't have KPIs at this time, NA. Select your answer now.
Well, good news. No one's reviewing them daily. All right.
All right, that's close enough.
So it looks like the 51% of the audience is reviewing these KPIs monthly, and that's probably fine for a lot of the KPIs. There could be some KPIs that people do look at weekly, some operational things. Probably more of I can see a lot more of the financial KPIs and things being looked at monthly versus weekly, but that's what I expected, I guess, on these results. The daily KPIs are a little. I'd love to know what's being tracked daily, and if you're tracking things daily, what's the goal of looking at those measurements? So don't be afraid to throw a little. Let us know what you're looking at dailies.
All right. So on that thought of reviewing the metrics, here's a great visual that we use with a number of our clients. It's called the bowling chart. It's a great visual tool, simple, one page, easy to understand, and we review this chart with clients on a monthly basis. Generally, it's one of the first things we look at in the beginning of a financial review meeting each month. So on the far left of this chart, you list the KPIs that you're tracking, or the few critical things that you're really paying close attention to. Just to the right of that metric then is your jumping off point, or where you're starting from. Then you can see that as you track this on a monthly basis, the expectation or target is on the top, and then the actual is on the bottom. And obviously if the actual meets the target, the box is colored green, and if the target is not met, the box is red. Very simple, easy to read. The nice thing about the bowling chart is before even digging into the details of the chart, I can step back and at a glance say, okay, what happened in June? It looks like June wasn't a very good month. We have a lot of reds. Let's understand what happened there. Additionally, if you look at number 4, field install errors, you can spot, with the bowling trend, you can spot trends that are occurring in your business. So for this example, in March or April, the organization started to say, okay, we have a month after month we're not achieving our target. What corrective action do we need to put in place in order to turn that around? So March, April, they implemented corrective action and are able to see improved results going forward.
We actually had one case where we're working with a client on a monthly basis, and they were tracking how quickly their service techs respond to their customers, and we found that over time that the service techs were actually responding faster to the small customers, and the largest, most important customers for this client, the service time was actually going up, and so it was actually going opposite of what they had predicted. And they were able to take kind of corrective action right away. And really the reason that matters is because they set an expectation level up at the beginning saying, we want the service call time to be X for the 80s and Y for the 20s, and they're able to measure that, versus just looking at it and going, how are we doing with our best customers? Okay, well, we're at X amount of time per call. Without having that jumping off point or the target of what we're looking for, we don't really know if we're getting better, getting worse, and at the end of the day, again, it's making sure that we're treating our best customers as well as we can.
Okay, the last and final poll question, it's, do your employees feel like they can directly impact the KPIs? So this is a yes or no question getting at employee engagement as it relates to your KPIs. Do your employees feel like they can impact them directly? Yes or no? No, have Neil collect the responses.
There we go. Getting those done.
I think once you close it.
57%.
57% feel like.
57% voted.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
$63. Still trying to decide. All right, we got it. Sure.
So it looks like that 74% feel that their employees are engaged and feel like they can directly impact the KPIs. That's great. It's very important that your employees are engaged, feeling as though that they can impact results. And we'll talk a little bit more about how to do that and get at that. Because we're measuring, now what? So what good is a KPI if you don't actually do anything with it? Number one, it's really important to communicate. This is just really important when it comes to KPIs, that everyone throughout the organization should know what's getting tracked, what it means, how they can directly impact it. It's also important to review the metrics regularly. It does us no good to measure if you aren't going to address results, share these results, look at ways that you can improve. Clients that we work with, we're reviewing that bowling chart, as I mentioned, on at least a monthly basis. Many times in production facilities, they may be looking at production rates and things like that on a weekly or perhaps even daily basis. Encourage employees to take ownership. This helps get at that employee engagement piece. Someone responsible for tracking the data, bringing forth ideas to improve, feeling like they really can directly impact the results. Communicate your results on very often and the actions to improve or maintain performance. It's very important. The third bullet, establish incentive and bonus programs to drive behavior. Again, this is another great way to get people engaged. We have a client that their bonuses are directly aligned to their KPI performance. So in order to receive their bonus every year, certain KPI metrics must be met. So don't underestimate employee engagement, and these benchmarks allow for clear targets to be set.
Yeah, so you know, one of the most important things here is just remember that you're probably not going to get it right. I mean, even if you do get all the KPIs right the first time, which is very rare, your business changes all the time, so you have to be ready to look at your KPIs and change with them, because at the end of the day, it doesn't do you any good to measure something that shouldn't be measured in the first place. So we really want to use these KPIs to drive performance. You know, in some of the most well-run plants in Wisconsin, you know, when you walk on the plant floors, you see KPIs and visual management all over, and you just see how engaged that the employees are, and they can tell you what's going on with the top customers or what's going on with the top products and things, and you really let the employees take ownership. You know, for the most companies, they're the ones that are directly involved with the creation of the product or involved in whatever service it is that you're tracking are the best ones to create the KPIs, because they really know in most cases what moves the needle when what to measure. And as long as you're ready to you know, do something with these KPIs and change them if you need to, then I think KPIs can be a really powerful tool for your business. Again, we're all busy on a day-to-day basis and distracted with day-to-day. You've got to make important decisions, and sometimes having these KPIs, especially when you're walking around and communicating with employees, is just a really easy way for everybody to get on the same page.
Here's some, we kind of shared some before and what our clients were saying as far as challenges in starting measuring KPIs, and here's some after quotes. So after they've implemented KPIs and been able to gain some traction, here's some of the quotes that came directly from clients. Morale has improved. Our employees feel like they are part of something. KPIs have driven accountability among employees. The biggest benefit is pulling so much data down to just a few items. Again, getting at what Bill spoke to, identifying the critical few things that are going to have the most impact on your business. Once we started measuring, we were able to easily identify poor performers and top grade accordingly. Another benefit of KPIs is it really helps identify where you might have poor performers or where there's a training issue, that maybe there's a KPI, a metric that you're not getting the results you need, and by tracking it and understanding it, you recognize that it's not necessarily the employees so much as it is just the training and what you need to provide employees so that they can perform better and ultimately improve that KPI.
And I think Heather alluded to this earlier, when you're first implementing the KPIs, we talk about measuring, we're talking about accountability and all these things, and that's sometimes why they're really hard to implement successfully in an organization, is people aren't used to being measured and people aren't used to being held accountable. So it's just one of those things that probably takes a little bit of tact too when you're implementing these for the first time, because it's used to drive business success and not necessarily treating it as a negative with the employees and things like that. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're starting to develop the culture, is that if you're not used to measuring things and putting the score down on the scoreboard, it's a little bit tough sometimes for the employees to get used to it. Sometimes we call it, for the companies that aren't doing this, it's like we call it 5-year-old soccer when the score is fun to fun. Everybody gets a trophy and things like that. So sometimes this is a little tougher to implement, but for the successful companies we work with, it's an everyday thing. Everybody gets it, everybody uses it, and it's really successful.
Good. And I just wanted to share a client example of this. Within the last year or so, we've had a client that went from not having any KPIs to being kind of our poster child of KPIs. So it's roughly $10 million in revenue, light manufacturing and assembly. Before implementing KPIs, the organization was on a very steep growth trajectory, and actually they still are. Production was strained trying to keep up with demand. There's a general feeling of chaos in the factory. People are constantly putting out fires. Employees are disengaged. Morale was poor. Turnover was starting to become an issue. And really, management came to us and said, we're just frustrated. There's nothing that we can do. We're just not making any headway. We want to make change, but we just don't see it help. And one of the primary things that we worked on them with was setting up KPIs. And on the front, it took some time. It was difficult at first to identify what are the most important things to be measured. And it wasn't right the first time either. Metrics are tweaked along the way. We find out what makes sense, what doesn't, and that's okay. So 6 months, probably 6 to 7 months later, the company has done a complete 180. There's visual KPI boards are located at each production line. Their employees are engaged. They understand the goals. Morale and turnover has improved. And in general, management just feels a lot more comfortable and confident in the factory's ability to handle future growth. One of the other great things that this organization particularly did was they would hold weekly meetings where they would review the things for the week and these KPI boards, and would actually select an employee to choose a KPI on the board and explain it and what it means and how they can impact it. It was a fantastic result. These employees, again, feeling more engaged, feeling like they're part of something, and really embracing the new culture of having these KPI boards.
So one of the really cool things they did is that this company, like a lot of companies, has a ton of different SKUs, a ton of different products, lots of customers, and what they were able to do is part of their process of simplification in their business anyway, they went ahead and coded their inventory either green, yellow, or red for fast-moving, slow-moving, high volume, and they've started to set KPIs around what do we want the green inventory to look like, what do we want the yellow and red to look like, and really for this company, making sure that they have the green, which is the good stuff, the high volume stuff, flowing like water through the plant, making sure that they have high turns on that high volume stuff. The yellows, probably less turns, maybe keep more of it in there, count it less, don't let it get in the way. And then the reds, really just making sure that they've got a plan to get the slow moving, older inventory out of the plant, but they don't lose focus because they've got targets set up. We know if they move their green inventory, great things happen. They count it, they make sure they know exactly where it is, how much they have. With the yellow and the red, they treat it less often, they don't look at it as much, and they have a specific plan set aside to deal with it. So that's one of the kind of reiterating, you just treat things differently in your business. Having KPIs around the things that are so important and crucial for your business will allow you to be much more successful and to really know the score on a month-to-month, week-to-week basis.
And also how important it is to just start somewhere. This company, I'm sure that they would tell you that starting KPIs was a little painful at first, and they didn't see with the benefits that could potentially come from it, and there was a lot of pushback, and this isn't going to be right, and we're not going to track the right things. But it's amazing. We just kind of helped push them to just start somewhere. And we perfected it along the way, and it's still a work in process, but they've just seen vast improvements just simply by getting started, which is sometimes the #1 difficulty with companies in getting them started. So really, to summarize, here's some key takeaways from today's session. #1, start today. Getting back to what I was just speaking of, identify that which you want to improve. What are the critical few things in your business that will help you achieve your goals, and create a KPI around it. It won't be right the first time, but the trick is simply start somewhere and perfect it along the way. The second bullet, aim to find the critical few metrics that will drive the greatest results. As I mentioned just prior to, there's the thing that many companies fall into is measuring too much and then just not being able to be successful at everything. Use visual management tools. Absolutely. Make sure that they're simple, easy to read, colors. Anybody should be able to quickly understand how the company is doing. Engage employees in your goals. This isn't just, KPIs are not just for management at the top. This really is for the holistic organization to embrace and be accountable for. And take action based on what the data is telling you. Really important that once you're tracking, that you're actually doing something with the data.
It's funny because we just went through the initial KPIs at a client together, Heather and I, and the first pass through, we really had to rein them back because they wanted to measure so much. And I remember the meetings, and we had meetings that went on and on and on about all these different KPIs they could measure. But at the end of the day, they sat back and pulled back all the KPIs and said, these are the 4 or 5 that we want to have. And if you set a goal for yourself, only measure 3 to 5 things to start with and get those right first. Then you kind of have a jumping off point. Then you can tweak, you can do this. But if you measure 10 and you try to get 10 KPIs going, chances are you're not going to have the time it takes to analyze those KPIs and go, are these telling you what you need to know about your business? By using these KPIs, is my business better today than it was yesterday? And is everybody in the organization swimming, rowing in the same direction? So just make sure you don't bite off too much right away. Pick 2, 3, 4, get those right, make sure that they're operating the way you want them to, and then if you think there's a couple more to add, then just add them in there. And rein yourself in because you're going to want to add, and this is really cool stuff, and everybody kind of gets engaged in this, just rein yourself in so you don't measure everything, because that's the easiest thing to do is start adding all these KPIs. So you do have to have some discipline to make sure that you don't start trying to measure everything or you won't measure anything.
So with that covers really all the material that Bill and I had for today. We thank everybody for joining us. Certainly, I think our contact information is here, and we're welcome to feedback. And if you have questions, if you're stuck, if you have, we know we need to measure this, we know this is important, but how do we create a KPI around it? Feel free to reach out to us. We're more than willing to help.
Yeah, and the last thing is too, you'll notice that we didn't give you a bunch of KPIs that you should run back and start measuring right away, and we talked about that, but what we didn't want you to do is just to think there's a cookie cutter approach to applying KPIs in your business. Every business is different, so it's really what drives your business. At the end of the day, why do people buy from you? What's your kind of value proposition? And try to make your KPIs align again with what your company mission is, and you'll probably be tracking the right things. So again, we can help. If you've got any questions, we can help you get some KPIs worked out. If you need help calculating them, just send us an email, let us know, and we can help you through that.
All right, my turn again. We did have a number of questions, but a couple of comments. One had to do with why track daily. And one of the participants said sales and product margin, and why focus. They wanted to focus on those particular things, and they track them on a day-to-day basis. There were a couple of requests for some of the materials that we have available that we will definitely put in the follow-up information. And one comment about one particular point, Heather, that you made, I think, about getting people involved and having difficulty, sounds familiar. Sounds familiar. So everybody's having that same issue. Thanks, Heather and Bill. Thanks for all the participants for joining us. As you leave the webinar, you'll be asked a few questions that will help us target information for future webinars. Please take a few minutes to answer them. It helps us improve these webinars. Watch for an email answering the questions and providing some additional information, some of the materials we talked about today. This complete PowerPoint and the webinar will be available on our website probably tomorrow morning, so take a look. Thank you very much. We appreciate your participation.